Hello, I'm Steve Green, President of Hobby Lobby and Chairman of the Board for Museum of the Bible. It is an honor for me to be able to share some of my family's story here at the Principled Entrepreneurship Conference. I would like to thank the Napa Institute and the Bush School of Business at the Catholic University of America for this opportunity. We were in my brother's home. There were 18 or 19 of us there, my parents, my brother and sister, our spouses, and our older kids with their spouses. We were facing a decision that would impact all of our lives, a decision that had the potential of bankrupting our business, a once-in-a-lifetime decision, and my dad wanted to hear from everyone. He wanted to know if everyone was on the same page in whatever decision we made. If we were not, it could cause serious division in our family for years to come. So after sharing what the situation was, he began asking if there were any questions and what everyone thought. He first asked Gen 3, which is what we call his grandkids, and worked his way up by age. The risks were clearly laid out, and everyone was given an opportunity to share their thoughts. Before I continue with the discussions of that meeting, let me tell you a little more about our family. I grew up in a normal, middle-class American home. My father was a manager of a general merchandise retail store called TG&Y. He was successful at his work and was promoted several times. He was eventually given a supervisory role over a district of stores. In 1970, while he continued working for TG&Y, he started his own business manufacturing mini frames. At the time, there was a design trend decorating a wall of a home with a collage of small picture frames. My dad borrowed $600 to buy a chopper and some molding to make frames. The business was run out of the home for the first couple of years. My brother and I were given the opportunity to make a little money by gluing frames together. We were given 7 cents per frame that we glued. We loved it. We were making money to buy some baseball cards and bubble gum. Then in 1972, Dad rented a 1,200 square foot space. In the back 600 square feet, he put the manufacturing operation, and in the front 600 square feet, he opened a retail store and called it Hobby Lobby. For the next 3 years, my mom ran the operation with no pay, as she had done for the previous 2 years. Then in 1975, my dad quit his job at TG&Y and committed all his energies to their new startup. He took a half cut in his pay from $26,000 to $13,000 a year. It was a big step and a risk my parents were willing to take. Since that time, Dad has continued to run the business and has grown the business to where it is today. With over 900 stores in 47 states, we have grown to be the largest arts and crafts chain in the world. Along with arts and craft supplies, we sell a large selection of home accents, framing, fabrics, seasonal supplies, and other categories to make a complete creative shopping experience. Our corporate offices, manufacturing, and warehouse are in Oklahoma City with over 10 million square feet of space. We continue to grow the company, opening 40 to 50 stores each year. The typical store size is 55,000 square feet, and we feel we can put around 1,400 stores in the 48 contiguous states. Alaska and Hawaii are the only states that we are not considering. We have learned many lessons over the years, but I'd like to focus on 2. Each were tied to a family meeting. I started with an introduction to the second meeting, but before I return to that meeting, let me tell you about the first family meeting. In the spring of 1986, my father invited the family over to his house for a meeting. At that time, there were many in the family that were working in the business. Of course, my parents, my brother and sister, my brother-in-law, my wife, 2 of our cousins, myself, we were all involved in the business. And we were invited to this meeting at my dad's house. My brother and one of my cousins had children, and they were asked to find babysitters to watch the kids. My wife and I were expecting our first child at that time. My father invited us to the living room, and after we were seated, he proceeded to tell us that he did not see how we would be able to survive. The prior year, 1985, was the only year Hobby Lobby had lost money. All of our stores were in the oil patch, and the oil boom that had been going on busted. There were businesses that were going out of business right and left in our part of the country. January 1st of 1986, we had just opened our 12th store. At this time in our company's history, all of our profits were made in the fourth quarter. The summer months were our slower months, and when finances were the tightest. With the loss of 1985, the slow months ahead, the spring of 1986 did not look good. My dad had always been able to figure out how we would be able to pay the bills. As a tax bill or a large invoice of merchandise came due, he knew of a source of revenue that would cover the bill. As with most new and growing businesses, you are constantly working to make ends meet. We were no different. That is why Dad called for the family meeting, to let us know of the dire situation we found ourselves in. That was a very tough year. Dad bore the brunt of the pressure and spent a lot of time crying out to God. As he writes in his book, he spent a lot of time away from the phone because those calls were not pleasant, and a lot of time in prayer. He got to the point where his cry was, God, if you want this company to succeed, you are going to have to intercede, because I don't see how we're going to be able to make it. The summer dragged on, and it seemed that it was one bad news report after another. But at some point in the year, there was a turning point. The tide turned, and the reports started looking better. 1986 is one of those years that you would not want to go through again, but you also wouldn't trade it because of the lessons learned. And while there are many lessons, there is one that stood out and has served our family well ever since: the understanding that God owns it all. While successfully building a company, it is easy to be tempted with the idea that, hey, I've got this. Hobby Lobby was doing well, and Dad was feeling some of this, and he felt God was saying, so you've got this, huh? Let's see how well you've got this all by yourself. The first statement we make in what we are committed to do is honoring the Lord in all we do by operating the company in a manner consistent with biblical principles. That is what we strive to do every day. We've never fully done it, but every day that is what we strive to do. Then in the mid-90s, the ministry side of the business started to grow. It started with my dad at the kitchen table going through the newspaper on Christmas Day. What he noticed was no one was recognizing Christmas for what it celebrated. Most advertisements wouldn't even say Merry Christmas. It was either season's greetings or happy holidays. While he was feeling frustrated about the advertising, he felt God said, well, neither are you. It wasn't that we wouldn't say Merry Christmas, but we would just run our normal advertising. As a result, he felt we needed to run an ad at Christmas pointing out what the season was all about: the birth of Jesus. So the next Christmas, we ran an ad that was about a quarter of a page ad telling about the birth of Jesus. The response was so positive, we decided to run an ad at Easter telling of his death and resurrection. We increased the size to half a page, adding illustration to the message. The ad was placed in every newspaper where we ran our normal advertising. The following Christmas, the ad was again increased to a full-page ad, and it became a regular Christmas and Easter proclamation. Soon after we started the seasonal ads, we were introduced to a ministry that we were inspired to support in a significant way. The ministry would print part of the Gospels of the New Testament and distribute it to students in countries around the world. The family came together and decided to set a 5-year goal. In order to meet the goal, we would have to drastically increase our giving. Dad, who had suggested the 5-year goal, later admitted he didn't think we would be able to meet the goal. He remembered hearing and saying to himself, you can't outgive God, and felt God said, have you tried it? At the end of the 5 years, we had met our goal, and our giving continued to increase to the point where for several years now we have given half of our profits for ministry causes. We tried and want you to know you can't outgive God. Not too long after we started increasing our giving, we decided to close our stores on Sunday. At the time, we calculated we were doing around $100 million in sales on Sunday. It was the busiest day of the week when you looked at sales per hour. It wasn't something that we felt we had to do for legalistic reasons. It was a part of our desiring to honor God in all we do. We started closing on Sunday by state. The states with the fewest stores went first, allowing us to see how it would work. After a 2-year period, all our stores were closed on Sunday. While some of our customers expressed frustration on not being able to shop on Sunday, many were very appreciative. Our employees loved knowing they didn't have to work and could spend time with their family or going to church on Sunday. There were other ministry efforts that have developed over the years, but one that my wife and I had the privilege to be a part of was building a Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. It started with a group that asked for our help as they wanted to put a Bible museum in Dallas. That led to us acquiring artifacts for a Bible museum. Eventually, as our collection grew, we felt a responsibility to make sure that the dream became a reality. We had a growing collection and the resources to get it started, and they had neither. So we took on the effort, and I had the privilege of becoming the point person for the family. At that time, I wanted God to know we were willing to go wherever He wanted. I looked at the top 10 metros in the United States, thinking it needed to be where it would be best attended. The other two cities that stood out to me were New York City and Washington, D.C., so we started looking in all three cities. Then we commissioned a nationwide survey with a primary question being, if we build it, will they come? Is there an interest in America for a Bible museum? The person that did the survey said the response to that question was overwhelmingly positive. He said, if you can get 60 to 70% of Americans to agree on anything, you're doing good. In the survey, the response was over 80% favorable for a Bible museum. His comment was, you have a winning concept on your hands. I remember thinking later, restaurants are a winning concept, yet they go out of business every day. We realized it wasn't enough to have a winning concept. If we were going to build a Bible museum, it would have to be done with excellence. As a result, we engaged some of the leading design firms in the U.S. to help us tell the Bible's story. The survey also showed that of the three cities where we were looking, the Bible Museum would be best attended in Washington, D.C. New York City was second and Dallas was third. So we focused on D.C., looking at any opportunity we could find. I remember as we were looking for a location, seeing many great-looking buildings. I wanted to find one of those impressive buildings for the Bible Museum. My thought was God's Word deserves the best. Yet what showed up was a building built as a refrigerated warehouse. I remember thinking, God, your Word deserves better than this. Later, I felt God would have said, I sent my son to a manger. It isn't what's on the outside that counts, but what's on the inside. You know, I believe we have the best material of any museum in D.C. We are telling the story of a book that has changed the world. I concluded, okay, God, we will take this building and do the best we can, telling your story. In 2015, we acquired our current location, and after 2 years of planning and building, in November of 2017, we opened the Museum of the Bible. It is a 430,000 square foot building that looks at the Bible in three primary ways: its history, its impact, and its narrative. There are other features of the museum. It has a restaurant, a children's area, temporary exhibit space, a banquet hall, a theater, a gift shop, features you might find in other museums, but it also has some unique features. It has a long-term exhibit from both the Israel Antiquity Authority and from the Vatican, a first for both. We even have a Disney-esque ride in our impact floor where we fly the visitor throughout Washington, D.C., showing them where Scripture is engraved on walls and monuments. It's a fun and creative way of learning that the Bible can be found all over that city. But what we quickly learned is that there is no building that can contain this book's story. We literally scratch the surface of the Bible story. As an example, in a small section on the impact floor, we show how the Bible has impacted art. I could fill the whole museum with biblical art. We are just scratching the surface. I have been told that there are two primary ways that the Bible is attacked. Is it true and is it good? There are those that say it's a novel, its stories are made up. Creation, the flood, the miracles, none are real. Or that the Bible is a scourge of the earth. It is the cause of wars and that we would be better off without it. On the history floor, the question we are addressing is the Bible true? We can't prove all the Bible to be true, but I can show that time and time again, evidence shows the Bible accurate in what it says. The archaeological and manuscript evidence is like no other. The floor starts with some of the archaeological evidence, then moves on to the manuscript evidence, then to the print and digital age. The floor ends with a look into the future. We show the effort to finalize the work of providing the Bible in every language of the world. While the Bible is in more languages than any other book, there is no close second, there is still much work to be done. With the Bible societies working in collaboration, a target date has been set. The goal is to complete the job by the year 2033. Something that has never happened in the history of the world is in sight, a book in every language of the world. A person has to choose what to believe about the Bible. I just want them to be educated on what they believe. There are many that have set out to prove the Bible is not true. But as they are honest analyzing the evidence, they have concluded to believe the Bible is not true would take more faith than to believe the Bible is exactly what it claims to be, the Word of God. On the narrative floor, the idea is for a person to understand the story of the Bible. The book is an incredible book. It was written over a 1,400-year period by over 40 writers on 3 continents in 3 languages, and they came from all different walks of life. From a king on his throne to a prisoner in his cell, in a time of great joy and from the depths of despair, the Bible was written. Imagine starting a book today and someone 1,400 years from today finishing the book and it going through 40 different hands and it tell a story. That is what we have in the Bible. There is nothing like it in all the world. The story is of a good creator God that created all things and it was good. But because of the disobedience of man, the relationship between God and mankind was broken. In order to repair that relationship, God had to send His Son to pay the price to restore what was lost. All we have to do is accept the free gift. I was at an event where there were some leading journalists from New York City, and one of them made the comment that there were those in his office that did not know what the Easter holiday was all about. These were adults and they didn't know why we celebrate Easter. There are many that don't know any of the Bible story. We think a simple understanding of that story is a good place to start and is the goal of the narrative floor. On the impact floor, the question is this book good? While we can see there are those that have used the Bible for their own selfish ill intent, we want to show that when we follow the teaching of the Bible, as intended, it has been good for mankind in every area of life. In science, education, governments, art, literature, music, in caring for the hungry, in caring for the hurting, even in business, the Bible has been used for good. That brings me back to the family meeting I started with, where we were facing a decision that would impact our whole family. A new law was passed that required an employer to provide in their health plan for their employees abortifacients at no cost to the employee. Products like the morning after and week after pill. We believe life begins at conception, and these products had the potential of taking life. While the bill was new and many of the details were needing to be worked out, the fine we were facing was $1.2 million per day if we chose not to freely provide those products to our employees. A fine that was not sustainable. Part of the discussion in our family meeting was, if we were to draw a line in the sand and refuse to provide the products that violated our sincerely held beliefs, what the potential outcome might be. We discussed 3 possibilities God might use. Daniel from the Bible gives us 2 of those. When he was first taken captive in Babylon, Daniel was told to eat the king's meat. The problem for Daniel was it violated Jewish law. He knew he could not eat what was provided, so he made an appeal. He asked that he be given that which would not violate Jewish law. He was first told no, so he appealed again, asking for a trial period to see if the concerns could be resolved. The appeal was accepted and the problem was averted. Later in Daniel's life, he faced another problem. A new law was passed that said Daniel could not pray to his God. He knew that he was the target of the new law, and in this case, there was no appeal option. Once the law was passed, there was no changing it. Daniel determined he would continue to do as he always did. When he heard of the law, he immediately knelt down, opened his windows, and prayed to his God. In this case, he faced the lion's den, and God showed up and delivered Daniel. 2 of the options were the problem could be averted or God could deliver. But a third option was discussed. Sometimes God pulls another tool out of the toolbox. Sometimes God allows a problem to be suffered. Job did lose it all. Stephen was stoned. All but one of the disciples were martyred. Christ died on the cross. But But in that suffering, God takes what the enemy means for evil and uses for our good. So as we face the decision, if we were going to stand by our conviction and not provide life-ending products, we didn't know what the outcome would be. Was the problem going to be averted, delivered, or suffered? This is where the lessons learned from the first family meeting informed our decision. Were we going to follow the lessons we had learned? God owns it all. We are stewards of what God has entrusted to us. Therefore, we are to honor God in all we do by operating our business according to His principles. In the end, after all the discussion was over, the decision was unanimous. We could not be part of taking life. We were going to have to sue our government, the government we love, believing it had violated our religious freedom in its requirement. During the process, there were tense times, but there was also a sense of peace, knowing that whatever the outcome, we were in good hands. We were confident we were doing the right thing. One of the arguments that was leveled against us is we were imposing our religion on our employees. To impose my religion on our employees would be a violation of my religion. We have no desire to force our religion on anyone. Our faith calls us to share the good news, not to force the good news. In this case, we were not imposing our religion on anyone. We were the ones being told that we had to violate our religious convictions. We do not provide employees with a free lunch, but that does not prevent them from eating. Our employees provide their own lunch. Because I am not providing an abortive product to someone does not force them from getting the product. On just about every corner where there is a pharmacy, the products are available. Our prayer is that no one would use the products that put life at risk. Our case went all the way to the Supreme Court, about 18 months after we had started the journey. In the end, the ruling was in our favor. It was a great day for our family, and we believe for our nation. Religious freedom was defended. We live in challenging times. We have an enemy that is roaring like a lion, seeking whom he may devour. He is a liar and is out spreading his lies. But God has given us a great gift in His Word. It has served me well in many ways. It has informed my family, my business, and my nation. None are perfect and never will be, but to the extent we follow its principles, it has served and will serve us well. The purpose of the Museum of the Bible is to invite all people to engage with the Bible. I pray you will be inspired to engage with the Bible in a greater way, that you will accept or deepen your relationship with the God of the Bible, that you will let its principles guide your life. I also invite you to make a trip to Washington, D.C. to visit Museum of the Bible, and while you're at it, you might as well stop by Hobby Lobby and stock up on your creative supplies. Thank you, and I pray God richly blesses you.